Welcome to Le Weekend, your essential roundup of French news on culture, business, the economy, and current affairs. We bring you a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus an additional focus feature blending reportage and cultural context. You'll find a seamless recap of the week's most important headlines without losing any content from our previous daily format, perfect for those who want to catch up in just one episode. Le Weekend is designed to keep you informed and engaged with a lighter touch at the end. Let's dive in. These are the headlines for Monday, June 8th. French telecom giants reached a deal to acquire struggling rival SFR. The companies, Bouygues Telecom, Orange, and Free's owner Iliad, said SFR's parent Altice had accepted their offer of 20.35 billion euros for the struggling mobile operator. The deal could reshape the French telecoms landscape by reducing the number of main operators from 4 to 3, as reported by Le Monde. France's trade deficit narrowed to 5.6 billion euros in April. Customs officials said this represents a contraction of 800 million euros since the previous month, thanks to a sharp rise in exports, as reported by Le Figaro. A French NATO jet shot down a stray drone in Latvia. This was the first time the alliance's Rapid Reaction Baltic air policing mission has shot down a drone in this country, as reported by Le Monde. The headlines on Tuesday, June 9th. Israeli Minister Bezalel Smotrich was banned from entering France. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said on social media platform X that 4 leaders of settler organizations and 21 violent settlers were also banned from the French territory, as reported by Le Monde. Cyprus signed a deal to host French soldiers. The island nation's president, Nikos Christodoulidis, expressed hope that the accord could strengthen bilateral defense ties and cooperation between the two countries, particularly at a time of heightened security concerns as conflicts ravage the wider region, as reported by Le Monde. The government announced measures to combat child abuse amid protests surrounding the death of 11-year-old Liana. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu on Tuesday presented initial measures to better protect children following a meeting with key ministers in a bid to quell public anger sweeping the country over the death of the 11-year-old, as reported by RFI. The headlines on Wednesday, June 10th. President Macron invited Middle East leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky to the G7 summit to be held in Evian next week. The summit will focus on the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and on rebuilding consensus on support for Ukraine, as reported by Le Monde. France and Germany announced the official end of the joint combat aircraft project known as FCAS. France will keep working on a next-generation fighter jet through 2040, as reported by France 24. France's central bank will lower its 2026 growth forecasts. The new governor of Banque de France said the growth forecast for 2026, which will be updated mid-June, will be below 0.9%, which is lower than what it predicted in March, as reported by Le Figaro.
The headlines on Thursday, June 11th. Immigration alone will not be enough to offset France's negative natural population growth in the medium and long term, according to the latest projections from the National Statistics Institute ANSEE, as reported by Le Monde. French cities are imposing curfews due to fears of violence during the FIFA World Cup. Fearing unrest after certain matches deemed high risk, major cities like Toulouse and Clermont-Ferrand plan to impose curfews on unaccompanied minors. Other mayors oppose fan zones in their municipalities, as reported by France 24. The decree limiting the duration of sick leave to 1 month for an initial prescription and 2 months for an extension is set to come into force on September 1st. These caps of 30 days maximum, except in exceptional circumstances due to the patient's health condition, to various healthcare professionals authorized to prescribe sick leave, such as doctors, midwives, and dentists, as reported by Les Echos. The headlines on Friday, June 12th. France laid to rest former First Lady Bernadette Chirac, who stood by her late husband during 12 years as First Lady, but also forged her own more discreet political career. She died on June 5th at the age of 93, as reported by Le Monde. It will soon be possible to pay for a metro journey in Paris with a bank card. Île-de-France Mobilité, the authority for public transport in the Île-de-France region, did not provide a time frame for the upcoming deployment, as reported by Le Figaro. 6 Georgian citizens have been sentenced to up to 7 years jail in France over the theft of rare editions of Russian literary classics, including the 19th century luminary Alexander Pushkin, from prestigious French libraries, as reported by Le Monde. You are listening to Le Weekend. And now that you're all caught up with the news from the past week, it's time for our focus story. Today we look at why sick leave made the news this week in France. France's sick leave system, once a model of worker protection, is quietly being reshaped. A succession of decrees and budget laws passed during the whole of last year has introduced caps on both the money workers receive when ill and now, for the first time in the history of the Republic, the length of time a doctor can certify them off work on a first prescription. To understand what these changes mean and why they provoke such a visceral reaction in France to something that may seem normal elsewhere, it helps to go back to provide context to where these rights came from. The road to a guaranteed sick leave allowance was long and fiercely contested. The laws of April 1928 and April 1930 put in place insurance against the risks of illness, maternity, invalidity, old age, and death for salaried workers holding an employment contract, representing the first truly robust legislation on social insurance. Even that modest foundation was hard won. During the parliamentary debates, a communist deputy rose energetically against requiring workers to pay a contribution at all, arguing it was a genuine social regression, a tax added to already insufficient wages, and that workers had rights to social insurance not as contributors but as workers who, through their labor, sustained society. The 1928 law nonetheless passed, and in that text provided that a sick insured worker who could not, according to a medical certificate, continue or resume work had the right from the 6th day following the start of the illness to a daily allowance equal to half the average daily wage. This system remained skeletal until the liberation transformed the political landscape. The Sécurité sociale was built on the ordinances of October 1945 and on the law of May 1946, generalizing it. Revolutionary in its ambition to create a new social order, an expression used by the senior civil servant Pierre Laroque, itself already present in the writings of Jean Jaurès. Laroque had been tasked from the autumn in 1944 with drafting the reform by the Minister of Labor Alexandre Parodi, and the draft ordinance of October 1945 was submitted to the Provisional Consultative Assembly, which returned a favorable opinion in August 1945. This is just after the liberation after World War II, by 190 votes to 1, with 84 abstentions and some radicals hostile to the choice of a single fund per department. The political ambition behind the ordinances was sweeping. The preamble declared Social Security is the guarantee given to each person that in all circumstances they will have the means necessary to ensure their subsistence and that of their family in decent conditions. The so-called Croizat laws, as a generalization, voted in 1946, covering the four main risks: illness, family, old age, and workplace accidents, placed France at the forefront of social security. That construction met fierce resistance. Employer circles were hostile to the employer contribution and to the management of funds by workers. Private insurance and mutualist organizations feared losing their role. Independent doctors feared being turned into civil servants. The architects of the system responded with pragmatism, creating complementary regimes and particularly funds for different professions, but the principle of universal solidarity held. What emerged and was consolidated over the following decades was a system under which a private sector employee who falls ill receives daily indemnities, indemnités journalières, paid by the health insurance fund after a waiting period. The daily indemnity corresponds to 50% of the basic daily wage, calculated from the average of gross wages over the 3 months preceding the stoppage, and is paid from the fourth day on after 3 days of non-compensation. For decades, the ceiling on the wage taken into account for that calculation was set at 1.8 times the monthly minimum wage. That ceiling determined the maximum amount any worker could receive, comfortable enough to make genuine rest feasible without financial catastrophe. That ceiling is now lower. A decree published in February of last year lowered it from 1.8 to 1.4 times the SMIC minimum wage, applicable to stoppages beginning from April last year. As a result, the daily illness allowance cannot exceed 41.95 euros gross per day in 2026. The reform strikes in a concrete way only from approximately 2,600 euros gross per month, and its effect becomes significant above 3,000 euros gross. Below the new ceiling of 2,552, the change has no impact at all. For public sector workers, a parallel measure applies. From March 2025, civil servants receive 90% of their index salary during the first 3 months of ordinary sick leave, compared with 100% previously. These may seem as small adjustments, but not in the eyes of those who track public finances. According to the Cour des Comptes, sick pay indemnities for illness rose from 7.7 billion euros in 2017 to 12 billion euros in 2022, with the auditors identifying mandatory electronic transmission to combat fraud and reinforce monitoring of high prescribing doctors as possible remedies. The overall social security deficit reached 15.3 billion euros in 2024, with health insurance spending under the national objective reaching 256.4 billion euros. The government's 2025 budget projected savings of roughly 14.8 billion euros for the social accounts as a whole, with sick leave indemnities described as having been very strongly growing for a decade among the most explicit targets. The most striking change, however, is not just financial but more structural in nature, and it carries an unmistakable symbolic charge. For the first time in French legal history, the duration of a sick leave prescription is being capped. Until now, the legal framework applicable to sick leave provided for no legally imposed maximum duration, either for the initial prescription or extensions. The measure inscribed for 2026 aims to slow the continued rise in daily indemnity spending against a backdrop of a growing deficit in health insurance. So for September 1st, 2026, an initial sick leave prescription will be limited to a duration not exceeding 1 month, regardless of whether it is prescribed in a town or a hospital, and each renewal will be capped at 2 months. Derogations and exceptions will be available when the worker's state of health justifies it, but the prescribing doctor must justify the decision in writing. The reform provoked a strike by independent doctors as early as January this year. According to MG France, the leading union for general practitioners, capping the duration of a sick leave amounts to standardizing illness, while the CSMF pointed to a risk of administrative pressure on practitioners. Following that demonstration, the health minister Stéphanie Rist announced on January the 16th that she wished to suspend the measure. But Article 81 remains legally in force. Even if it does not eliminate medical discretion entirely, it crosses a line that French law had never drawn before. It caps prescription length and allows health insurance oversight. The cumulative effect of these reforms, reduced ceilings, reduced public sector replacement rates, capped prescription durations, and a generalized telechecking system, represents a meaningful contraction of protections built layer by layer of nearly a century. The 1928 law gave workers an amount usually half the average daily wage. The 1945 ordinances gave them a system with solidarity baked into its architecture. The laws of 1946 extended and deepened that system against the resistance of employers and professional guilds. What is happening now does not quite dismantle the architecture, but it lowers several of its load-bearing elements. The contrast between the weight of that 1945 founding moment and the quiet, technical way these rollbacks are happening and their political and social meaning has not been lost on the unions and medical professionals who were first to object, who claim that when you begin to standardize illness to fit it within fiscal time horizons and accounting categories, it is doing something qualitatively different from adjusting a contribution rate. It is changing what solidarity means in practice, which is in the end what the whole system was built to express.
Thank you for listening to Le Weekend, your one-stop destination for the main headlines in France. Catch our weekly roundup every weekend wherever you get your podcasts. Stay informed.